Afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all here. We're going to answer that question, why it's so hard to be a Christian. It actually comes up in the reading we just had in verse 16. It seems a bit of an odd thing to write, really. Yet if anyone suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, let him glorify God in that name. There seems to be a kind of assumption that really in life, if you do good, then good things will happen to you. If you do bad, then bad things will happen to you. If we work, people put incentives for you to work harder, to get bigger rewards and maybe get promotions. But God doesn't seem to work in quite the same way as that. In fact, he seems to work in totally the opposite way to all that. And we'll go through and look at some people and see how hard actually following God was for them, and can be for other people as well. And then find out why God does that. Why does he work in that way? Because, to be honest, we all like the easy life, don't we? We all like, things to be going along easy, no problems, no troubles, and we all feel great. But the Bible quite clearly tells us if you want to follow Christ, to be a Christian, then you're going to face some problems. You're going to face some hardships. But you're not going to complain about them. In fact, you're going to feel blessed by them and feel grateful for them. There are examples of many people in the Bible, the disciples included, who are grateful for these things happening to them, which seems totally opposite to the way that we think, or totally opposite of the way that we'd actually probably like things. But God, of course, does everything for a reason, so that's what we're going to look into today. So we'll look at a few examples of a few people through the Bible, some well-known people. We can't pick every single one out, but I mean, if you want to talk to me, you'll probably find a whole host of people in the Bible who had really hard lives. I mean, not even mention Job, who had a great family, and it's all taken away from him. And there are many people, examples where bad things seem to happen to those that followed God. So we'll start quite close to the beginning of the Bible. We think about Abraham. Now, Abraham was described as a friend of God. In other words, God thought a lot of this person, Abraham. He was a person that God could associate with. Abraham was a righteous man. He followed God in every way that he possibly could. So he was a good man. So what did God do? Well, God turned around to him and said, kill your son, basically. I want you to go out and kill your son. Now, I don't know how you feel about it. We've got sons. Wouldn't be the first thing that I'd want to do to any of my sons, but God said to Abraham, this friend of God, this person that he thought was righteous, you've got to kill your son. And Abraham actually went to go through it. He collected all the wood, he walked off to a mountain, laid out all the wood, and had the knife in his hand before he was stopped. He still went through it, but that was a bit of a hard thing for Abraham to go through, wasn't it, really? But why did Abraham go through it? And as we go through these things, we'll answer these questions at the end. Why did Abraham go through that? Why did Abraham still do what was told of him, even though it was a hard thing? Why did he do it? Then there's Moses. Moses was born into a terrible time, really, when children were being killed. He was we all know the story. He was put in a basket and he was floated along the river, and he was found and grew up in the court of Pharaoh. But then things happened and he went away. Then God told him, well, you've got to go back and see Pharaoh now. I know you're a good man, but go back and see Pharaoh, and you're going to get the people of Israel who are still captive inside Egypt out. Now, logically thinking, you think, well, God can do all things, so Moses can walk down into Egypt, say to Pharaoh, let my people go, and they all walk out again. No, that's not the way it worked. God said to Moses, you're going to go down to Pharaoh, ask him, and he's going to say no. So he's kind of thinking, well, if I was Moses, I'd be kind of thinking, well, that doesn't make much sense, does it? Why are you asking me to do that? And then Pharaoh's not going to let me do it. Why are you making it so difficult for me? Why can't it just happen? Let's just think about that for a little bit, and we'll think about Abraham for a little bit, why he did that, why he went through that. And this might start answering the question about why it's so hard to be a Christian. Now, Abraham had been told that his son would be part of an inheritance, would be part of a promise of a growing people, a people that were to inherit a land. Now, Abraham was thinking, well, he's just told me to kill the person he's promised me, so there must be something else. In Abraham's mind, he was thinking, there's got to be something else. I think God has told me to go and kill Isaac, his son, but there's got to be something else, because God has also promised that Isaac will become a great nation and grow to a great nation. So there's got to be something else happen. There's got to be something else happened. Even if I kill Isaac, something else has got to happen. So Isaac's still got to be around. What about Moses down in Egypt, where he's told to get rid of all these people, to get these people all out, but he's told by God, I'm going to say to Pharaoh, make Pharaoh say no all the time. And 9 times he said no, as all the plagues got worse and worse. On the 10th, when the firstborn was killed, then he let them go. And even then, he still chased Moses out of Egypt. So just think about Moses. If Moses had gone down there to Egypt and said, let my people go, and Pharaoh said, yeah, okay then, you can all go. What do you think the people of Israel, the ones that were slaves down in Egypt, would have thought? Would they have thought, well, God let me out? Or would they have thought, Moses let me out, got me out? And sometimes this is how God works. God has to show that he is in control of all these things. God has to show that he's the one who's influencing what's going on here. So Exodus chapter 7, and our Bible's a bit. Chapter 7, verse 3. It's after God has said that Moses is going down into Egypt. Verse 3, but I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my sign, and though I multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh will not listen to you, and I will lay my hand on Egypt, and bring my host, my people of the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by great acts of judgment. So there was a reason behind the fact that God was going to make Pharaoh keep saying no. So the world could see his great wonders. They could see these famines and these pestilences and the light and the dark and the frogs and the blood and all those things. Egypt could see that God was in control, but also his people could see that he was in control. So this is starting to answer the question that why he makes it so difficult to be a Christian, to follow him. There's a reason behind it. The reason is to show that he is in control, that he is the one that we do things for, and he is the one that's able to save us, because he did save Isaac. Isaac wasn't killed, and he did save the children of Israel. He brought them out of the land to take them back to Israel. But there was hardships first. They had to learn a lesson. They had to realise who was in control. They had to realise who the power was. They had to realise who they served. I mean, when Moses got to the Red Sea, did it happen the easy way there? Did they all get into boats and sail across the Red Sea? No. They still had to see that God was in control. So Moses had to beat the sea with his staff so the waters parted so they could walk through. It was the hard way. But it all shows a sign, because in doing that, in passing through the sea, it also showed something for the future, because it's not our subject today, but I'm sure you can hear this said many times from a Christadelphian platform about baptism. They walk through the water to be saved. And the Bible teaches quite often, and we'll may touch on that towards the end, of how we can be saved. Even though we do face hardships, as we'll go back to that one in Peter, even if you're baptised, even if you come into God, it doesn't give you an easy life. You're not promised an easy life. In fact, quite often the opposite. But we always have to realise there's a reason behind what God did. How about a few other people? How about David and Goliath? Why was it done that way? Why did David come along with a little slingshot and a little stone to hit this giant that nobody else could kill? Why do it that way? Why not pick a mighty warrior? Why not pick somebody that was as strong as Goliath? Because God had to show that he was in control. God had to show that he was the one that was in control of all these things. And also, David was the person who realised that it was God that was in control. So that's another thing we could take, that sometimes when these hardships happen, or we have to do things the hard way, it's because God is teaching us something. He's showing us that he loves us, and he's also showing us that he wants us and needs us. About Gideon. Now, Gideon was at a time when Israel were not good people. They kept going backwards and forwards to God. They followed God and then they didn't follow God, and they were a bit mixed up. And they had to defeat this army. So did that in the easy way. Gideon had quite a big army. It was 32,000 men he had. Reasonable sized army. So what did God do? Well, God said, send all the ones that are scared home. And 22,000 people of that army went home. They left. And left 10,000 left. 10,000. And yet God said, no, that's going to be too easy. You've got to get rid of some more. So he sent them down to the water, to drink water at this well. And he said, well, pick all the ones that are drinking that way and all the ones that are drinking another way. You can send them home as well. So he's left with 300 people. 32,000 strong army he had. He's now left with 300. Why did God make it that difficult? Why couldn't God just say, well, just attack them and I'll make sure you win? Because God knew that they were going to win anyway. Why did God make it do it the hard way? It was a test, wasn't there? There was a test in that to see if the people of Israel would still believe in him. Would they still think that God was in control? Would they still think that God was able to defeat this army, even now that they were 31,000 odd short of the army they had in the first place? Of course, they won the battle. But they had to do it the hard way so they could see who was in control of all things, where their destiny lay. Again, we think about Jesus, probably one of the most well-known characters of the Bible. Promised from right back in the beginning of time. Right back in Genesis, this man was promised that he would save Israel and save the world. So he came along. Was it easy? Was it easy for Jesus? Was it easy for his disciples? Was it easy for those that followed him? No, it wasn't. Jesus, we know, that ended up crucified on a stake, nailed to a cross. His followers were scattered around. Many left him. Why was it done that way? God could have just sent Jesus, and Jesus could have come. He could have defeated the Roman army. That empire could have been set up, and a world empire set up, and that was the end of that. Why do it this way? Why do it the harder way? Let's go back to 1 Peter chapter 4. Because there are answers to why this happens, why it's all done the difficult way. It's not exactly saying that to make sure that God is making sure that we do love him. It's not like that. It's saying that I've seen something in you, and he picks all sorts of strange people. He's picked me for a start off to be a follower of him. But then he's let me follow him, and things happen in my life. I mean, 5 years ago, I had a firework go my eye and blow my eye out. He said, well, why on earth did that happen? But actually quite a few amazing things happened because of that. So you do see that God does do things and make things difficult, but good things do come out of it. So we have this quote here written by Peter in 1 Peter chapter 4. In verse 12 he says, Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you as though something strange was happening to you. He's basically saying, if you're a Christian, don't be surprised if something bad happens. Just don't be surprised. I mean, literally these days, he was actually talking literally about fire, as a lot of them were burnt alive, the Christians in those days. It was an actual literal thing. But that wasn't just written for those, their benefit, it's written for all our benefits. So don't be surprised when bad things happen, and you tried and you tested. And verse 13 goes on, but rejoice. That just always seems a strange thing to say, isn't it? Don't be surprised when bad thing happens, but be happy. The thing is, what he's actually telling us, because God tries us and God tests us, and we'll see what that means in a moment. It also means he loves us, and he sees something in us that he can use, something in us that he wants to be part of the kingdom that's going to come upon this earth. And the thing is that with all things, there's always a reward at the end. If you go to work and you have those incentives, you get rewarded for doing those things. And God is full of grace, and he's full of love to each one of us. He says, yes, you're going to be tried. Yes, you're going to be tested. Yes, hard things are going to happen. But there's going to be something amazing at the end. We'll look at that in a moment. So what does God do? God does this thing called testing or trying. Even if we go back, we're not going to go to Hebrews chapter 11, but it describes that idea of when Abraham took Isaac to be sacrificed. In Hebrews chapter 11 it says that God tested Abraham by telling him to sacrifice his son Isaac. He wanted to make sure that Abraham really did love him. He wanted to make sure that he was willing to go through anything for God. And that's the thing about it. God wants us, of all his children, he wants to know if you're willing to go through anything and still follow him. And there's many examples through the centuries of martyrs and people that have been killed because they followed God, and slaughtered because they followed God. And that doesn't change. That's never changed. People that have followed God have always been persecuted. People that follow God truly have always been tested to see if their faith will remain sure. So all the way through the Bible we have examples of God testing and trying his people. through the Bible, it's mainly Israel, his people. So he tried and tested the Israelites in the wilderness. He tried and tested them in many stages through their travels, and by many nations. Many nations came to invade Israel. Many nations took them into captivity. But they're still there. God has said, well, I'm going to try and test it. They failed. They can go away now. I'll try somebody else. Israel is still there. God's people are still there. It doesn't matter how many times he's tried and tested them, he still kept them as a nation because they're his people. And he does the same for us. All those that have become baptised, all those that want to be part of this coming kingdom that's going to come on this earth very soon. Yes, you're going to be tried. Yes, there are going to be problems. But those problems come about because God loves you. Those problems comes about because you're his children. Those problems come about because he wants to make sure you want to be part of that kingdom that's going to come. To Matthew 26, verse 41. Use some of this morning to breaking bread. It's this idea of watch. It means to stay awake. In verse 41, Jesus says to his disciples, he'd taken some away that he could pray because he knew that his death was near, and he was feeling he had troubles about that. And he wanted to pray to his Father. He said to his disciples, "Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak." So it tells us a few things there, doesn't it? It says you have to pray to help you through these problems that may come upon you. And it also tells us God understands that sometimes we can be weak. God understands that sometimes we may not live up to those expectations. God understands the fact that sometimes when those problems come upon us, we do dither. Because he says that, that mind that's inside you, you've looked at the Bible, you've wanted to be a Christian, you wanted to follow my son, but sometimes flesh is weak. But God is there to help us, and that's why he says pray. You can pray to God to help you through the problems, because the only way in reality that these problems happen that God helps, they're there for our help. They're not for our to destroy us or to make us weak. They're to try and help us to follow God more closely. And like I said, it may, to our human way of thinking, be a strange way to do it, which obviously works. Because God has said, I'm going to set a kingdom upon this earth. My son is going to reign as king on this earth. And all those that go through these trials, these tests that I've set there, and still want to follow me, still want to follow my son, will be in that kingdom. They'll have a place in that kingdom. They'll reign as kings and priests. They will live forever. So there is a reward. There is a reason why this all happens. That yes, there are things that happen, and some terrible things recorded in the Bible that happened to those that followed God. We have Stephen, who was a great follower of Jesus, who was stoned for explaining why he followed Jesus, and killed. You think, well, why? Doesn't seem fair. But Stephen knew that he'd be in the kingdom. Because he'd faced that trial, because he'd faced that, he'd come through it, he knew that he'd be in the kingdom. And that's the only thing we can actually say about this in the end, is the fact that it's hard being a Christian. I mean, if you go out into the streets now and say you follow God, you follow Jesus, and the kingdom's going to come, you probably thought of it probably as a bit of a nutter. But that's not our problem. We have to go out and tell people about it. We have to tell people that God is in control. Jesus is his son. Jesus is coming back on earth to reign in a kingdom that will cover the whole world. Sin or doing wrong will no longer reign on this earth, but following God and following his ways will. And no matter what happens to us as followers of Christ, that is our end goal. So any problems we come across, any tests, we look forward as Christians to something better, to something greater. Because there's an amazing reward in front of us. So we'll end up, we'll go to Luke chapter 20 just to finish off. Oh, sorry, Luke chapter 6, 20, sorry. It's a version, I mean, it's probably expanded on more in Matthew, but I really wanted to look at this bit here. It's what's known as the Beatitudes in Matthew, where Jesus explains that if you live a certain way, then you'll be blessed. Verse 20, Jesus goes on to say, "Blessed are you that are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you that are hungry now, for you will be satisfied. Blessed are you that weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you and revile you, and spare your name as evil, on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day, and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is in heaven. For so their fathers did to the prophets." So Jesus actually says, feel happy when you're poor, because you've got a place in the kingdom of God. Feel happy if you're hungry now, because you're going to be fed. Feel happy now when you're sad, because you're going to laugh. Feel happy when people hate you and say bad things against you and ridicule you, because you follow God. Because there's an amazing reward in front of you. There's a kingdom in front of you. There's everlasting life in front of you. So why is it so hard to be a Christian? It's not because God deliberately wants to make it hard for everybody to get into his kingdom. That's not how he works. His grace is immense. He wants everybody to begin. In fact, he tells us on 2 occasions in the Bible that he wants everybody to be in that kingdom. That's his will. That's what he wants. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen, because there are those that are tried and tested that fail and won't have a part in that kingdom. So what we request is that you open the pages of the Bible, you look at the lessons these people give us, and the lives they actually led, and the hardships they did and went through because they followed God and they followed Jesus. And you can go through the whole Bible. There's lots and lots of stories about how people face bad things because they followed God. But all those people that face those bad things and still follow God will still be in the kingdom of God when it comes upon this earth. They'll be resurrected from the dead. They'll live forever. So, yes, it's a time of trial. It's a time of testing being a Christian. But if you truly love God and truly love his Son, then the reward that comes out of that is incredible. Thank you.